answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
I've thought about this decision long and hard. You know, I've contemplated with my friends, my family, my teammates, and this wasn't an easy decision to make. However, I've decided that this upcoming fall, I will be taking my talents to Pombon. I know, there's going to be a lot of uproar about this decision, and ultimately it was one that took me a lot of time to make. However, it's set in stone. Thank you for following me throughout my journey, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. Thank you. Hi, hello, VinnyEndDragon here, and welcome to another video. Today we will be discussing Pokemon hot takes. Every few weeks I have everyone in my community send me their Pokemon hot takes. This can be after a Pokemon Direct, a new game, or just every now and then. These are all done in my community Discord, which the link will be in the description. I'm also doing a Cobblemon Survivor in my Discord. The trailer for that will be linked in the description below, as well as the link to my Discord. So please feel free to join if you enjoy the channel or just want to talk to me directly. And with that, let's get straight into the takes. The first take is the names Mr. Windy Chew and Mrs. Wavy Chew piss me the fuck off. Not too much. I actually really like the little Pikachu guys. I mean, obviously they're little gimmick plushy things, but I mean, I like them. Alright, next hot take, and this one is actually interesting. Weaker abilities for Route 1 Mon should all have bonus effects outside of battle. Now, I'm already going to talk about the first part of this take. Effects outside of battle don't really matter as much for me. Like, obviously there's stuff like Intimidate, which are obviously great in-game abilities, but then they also have the added benefit of you not running into lower level Pokemon. There's some other ones too, but overall, effects outside of battle, most of the time people don't even notice. So, I mean, it would be cool to have more of them, but at the same time, I really feel like they don't matter. And then the Route 1 Mon should have strong hidden abilities and good movesets way after they are normally used, so people are rewarded for sticking with them. An idea for this would be strong normal moves and adaptability, or another boosting ability like Furret gets in Radical Red. I can't speak on Furret in Radical Red, I don't really know the changes that well, but I think that making the Route 1 Mon strong late game is kind of just a disservice to what they're supposed to do. Like, a lot of the time, the reason why that they are so strong early and then bad late is that they want you to pivot to a lot of the other stronger late game Pokemon, and there's no reason to pivot to the new strong late game Pokemon if you already have the early Pokemon in your team. Now, you could just say, oh, well, just give me the strong late game Pokemon earlier, but then those Pokemon are going to be stronger earlier than the normal ones. So I get why there's a scaling here of just saying, oh, well, like, let's say I like Pidgeot, and I get Pidgeot early. Well, you could switch over to, like, I don't know, what's a late Gen 1 flying type? Like, you could switch over to, like, Aerodactyl, let's say, or Dragonite. But again, I think that there should be incentive for switching to those Pokemon, which are also kind of time sinks. So, from a gameplay perspective, I understand why they design it the way they do. I understand wanting to make, like, the rodents better. And for reference, I actually think they did a really good job with, like, Mousehold and, like, Palmot, which are usually weaker because they're the Pikachu clone and then the rodent. But then, like, Mousehold gets stuff like Population Bomb really late. And then there's Palmot's Revival Blessing, which is a unique gimmick that makes it really, really good. Overall, I mean, I do understand wanting to make Route 1 rodents stronger, but I kind of get why they don't from a gameplay perspective. Alright, next hot take is Browt is without a shadow of a doubt the worst looking starter they've ever made, and looks like a fan-made Pokemon. Now, I want to get off the bat with the fan-made Pokemon thing. I feel like the same thing is said every single generation. Like, when Generation 8 came out, and when Generation 9 came out, I remember they revealed the starters first. This is the marketing tactic now, where the starters are the first Pokemon revealed in every generation. And I think that because of the way it is done, to where the starters are revealed first, the way that the art style changes in between each generation, because they're inherently new Pokemon, but they're the only new Pokemon, they always look fan-made. You could even say the same thing about the other two, Gekwa and Pombon, but I don't really agree with the whole fan-made thing. I feel like you could say the same thing about a lot of Pokemon. And every time they get revealed, I'm like, oh, these kind of look weird. They look odd when it comes to other Pokemon. But I think it's just that Pokemon's design changes between generations, and they sort of, like, change over the years. I felt the same way when Gen 9 came out. I'm like, these don't look real. And then the first part, I think Browt is without a doubt the worst looking starter they've ever made. I don't agree. Honestly, I might have agreed the first time I saw it, but honestly, the more fan art I see, the more different angles and stuff, I do think Browt has its merits. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not picking it, obviously, if you saw the intro. But I think it is funny. I think Browt is inherently a funny-looking guy. I don't think he's ugly. I actually think all of the starters in their base forms look pretty good. I'm not super big hater on all of them. I think Browt is my least favorite, but I'm not crazy about it. However, worst looking starter they've ever made is just objectively not true. I mean, if we want to go through, like, worst looking starter they've ever made, I could just look up the Pokemon starters and just go through a list of every single starter that I think is uglier than Browt. Like, off the bat, I think the worst grass-type starter of all time is Chespin. Like, just in terms of base looks, Chespin is fucking ugly. And, like, every form of Chespin, I mean, Chestnut's fine, but, like, fucking Quilladin is awful. I hate Quilladin. I think Rowlet also isn't my favorite thing. I know some people really like Rowlet because it's just a little rotund bird. But also Browt is a little rotund bird, so I don't know where that comes from. I may get a lot of hate for this, but Trico itself, I feel like a lot of people are gaslit by the anime. I'm not a big Trico guy. I think that Sceptile is cool, and Grovyle is alright, but Trico itself is just a little bit awkward. And then, probably my own hottest take is I think Bulbasaur and the Bulbasaur line look fucking ugly. I can't stand Bulbasaur. And then if I wanted to include other starters of different types, I mean, I think Sobble in base form is way worse than Browt. I don't like Sobble. I think Sobble is very ugly. The next take, another one, make the old legendaries get an ability update, and give some of the new ones weaker abilities. Urshifu and the Paldean box arts got way too good abilities. I'm gonna be honest, this is just a statement of power creep. I'm planning on making a whole video essay on whether or not I think power creep is good for Pokemon, because, well, spoiler alert, I think it is. However, I do understand why you'd want to make the old legendaries better, but here's the thing. A lot of the old legendaries are still really, really good. Even without the abilities that they have in comparison to the new ones, if you look at old box art legendaries, like Ho-Oh and Lugia are still really, really strong. Ho-Oh has Regenerator, which I feel like a lot of people don't talk about, and Lugia has Multiscale, so I think that is really, really, really broken. Then you want to talk about Gen 3 legendaries, which were the start of Weather. Groudon and Kyogre are still relevant. I think that you could maybe have an argument when it comes to the Creation Trio. I think that, like, Giratina, Palkia, and Dialga's abilities aren't great. I think they're just kind of decent Pokemon. Then you have Gen 5s, which are kind of just Mold Breaker, but in a different font. I think the Gen 5 legendaries are fine, especially when you give them, like, the Kyurem fusions and shit. I mean, old legendaries are still really, really good. They're just worse than the new ones. If you want to talk about how the abilities for, like, Urshifu and the Paldean box arts are really, really good, I mean, I get that. I understand it. However, I mean, even look at, like, back when, like, Darkrai came out, right? Like, Darkrai was incredibly strong. I mean, it's just, I understand, like, aside from, like, in terms of side legendaries, I think that, like, all of the genies back in Gen 5 were incredibly strong. I mean, you have Torn T with Regenerator, you have Lando T with Intimidate, you have Thundurus T who gets negated because he sucks. Like, I think that even when you consider power creep, a lot of the old legendaries are still really good. The only exception I will make to this is Mewtwo. I do think Mewtwo should get an ability other than Pressure. However, Mega Mewtwo Y is going to be back in Champions, so I think Mewtwo will be just fine. And then this next take sort of ties into the first one about the power creep thing, which is stop the power creep with a weaker gen and gimmick, and start with some nerfs, and please limit the TM list. The TM list I'll talk about in a second, but I do not agree in making a generation worse than the last one. I think that when you make a generation with Pokemon that are all just worse than the last one, the generation becomes bad. And I think I have the perfect example about that with Generation 2. Generation 2 Pokemon across the board are worse than Generation 1 Pokemon. And the Johto Dex is horrible. The Johto Dex has aged like milk. There are like 5 good Pokemon in it, and they are evolutions of Gen 1 Pokemon. They are so bad, in fact, that Gen 4 had to come and save their legacy by offering them some evolutions in their decks. I mean, Gen 2 had the audacity to try and release, like, Murkrow by itself. When, like, Pokemon, like, Pidgeot and Fearow were already existent. These Pokemon are terrible. Now, I know Murkrow's better now because of Prankster and stuff, but keep in mind back then. And then, sure, Gen 2 did have some, like, you know, decent Pokemon, you know, Scizor and stuff. But, like, overall, Gen 2 was so much worse than Gen 1. And even though there was some power creep, there was way too little, which meant that pretty much every character in-game used Gen 1 Pokemon. Pretty much everyone at the time used Gen 1 Pokemon, aside from, like, 3. And just overall, Johto as a region flops by itself. Aside from, like, Ampharos and Umbreon, no one actually likes using Gen 2 Pokemon in their Gen 2 playthroughs. If we were to do this, where Gen 10 as a dex would be way, way weaker than every Pokemon beforehand, and they were just terrible, right? Then people were just gonna start using Pokemon from previous generations in Gen 10. They're gonna have their Pokemon that they attach to because, you know, like, it's sentimental value and stuff like that. But people do ultimately, even subconsciously, like Pokemon that help them win in a casual playthrough and are fun to use. They have some fun gimmick, they have some fun interesting thing. And if you don't have something that makes them more interesting than something they already like, they're just going to use what they already like. And then the gimmick thing I can kind of contest with. I think that making a weaker gimmick is fine. It doesn't really hurt anything. Making the gimmicks interesting is far more important than making them strong. And I feel like ultimately it's getting harder and harder to make more creative gimmicks. But we'll see what they do. Also, make TMs breakable again. No, that's awful. I would hate that. Why would you do that? If I have 3 electric types and I want them all to learn Thunderbolt, and then I catch a 4th electric type later on and I want that to have Thunderbolt, why would I not give it Thunderbolt? You could say, oh, for like hardcore Nuzlocking reasons, it makes the game harder, but that's like artificially inflated difficulty, and you could just like use a TM once if you want to do that. I like playing Pokemon where I get to have good moves. And some Pokemon's learn sets are bad. You look at like stone evolutions and shit like that. If I want Arcanine later on in the game, but you only get 1 flamethrower TM, then you just have no reason to use Arcanine, which sucks. It really sucks. Finally, and this one is a very interesting take. I mean, it's very layered, so I'll talk about all of it. There is 0 reason to buy Fire Red and Leaf Green for the Switch, and I doubt there will be any reason to buy games similar to this release. Even if they offer the old event stuff, my main 2 reasons are as follows. The more obvious answer is that you could emulate it for free. Most, if not all, Pokemon offered in event tickets are given to you once you beat the game and are entirely accessible elsewhere. I love the old games a lot, but I don't think you could justify a $30 purchase for a game that's over 20 years old that's not even in a bundle. If it was like the Ultimate Gen 3 experience and it had Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and Fire Red, Leaf Green for like $40, I'd heavily consider it. So here's the thing. I don't really feel like I agree. Now, here's the thing, again, obviously you could emulate them for free. However, I do feel like part of the compatibility there is the fact that, first of all, not everybody has a computer. Straight up. You could try to emulate on your phone through those like sketchy apps and stuff like that. I've seen people do it. It's not something I've looked into personally. I'm sure that you can, but it's a lot harder to do when you do not have a computer. Second of all, I get the thing with the event tickets where they're given to you elsewhere and stuff like that. Most of the Pokemon you could get in Fire Red and Leaf Green are accessible elsewhere. However, I do feel like there is a cool part of it, and that is the fact that A, it's 100% on the Switch, which you probably already own, and it's $40, not like buying a, you know what I'm saying, a Game Boy Advance and then buying the cartridge and stuff. That shit's basically impossible. And it has, I mean, the Pokemon Home accessibility means that you could, like, keep those playthrough Pokemon forever. You could shiny hunt in Fire Red and Leaf Green and actually keep those shinies. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do, like, a shiny lock or whatever with your friends, let's both hop on Fire Red and Leaf Green, shinies only, right? And then you keep playing that. You get to keep the shinies after. Like, I think that there is reason to get it if you really like the old games and you plan on doing stuff in them, and you do want the Pokemon after and stuff like that. Again, the emulation thing is like, okay, if you really want to play Fire Red and Leaf Green. To be fair, also, I'm not the type of guy who just plays Fire Red and Leaf Green. Like, I'm not sitting here like, man, I really want to play Fire Red and Leaf Green. So, who knows? Maybe some people really want to do that, and if they do, this is the thing for you. Go ahead if you don't want to just play it on a computer. Plus, it's a more authentic experience. Some people probably haven't even played the games before, but overall, I feel like it's kind of give and take. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Pokemon Hot Takes. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and if you really enjoyed the content, please be sure to, again, check the Discord if you want to make your own hot takes, and tune into the next video, which will be very soon, hopefully. And as always, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.